In moments of national shock and political volatility, silence can feel safer than speaking out, but it can also be a statement all its own. In the wake of the killing of 2 American citizens in Minneapolis and a growing resistance to federal immigration enforcement actions, organizations across the country are wrestling with a familiar question: how or whether to respond at all. Today, crisis communication strategist Mike Rea joins me to talk about what organizations should be thinking about right now, what helps, what hurts, and what can permanently damage trust.
Bartholomew Town.
We're brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online. Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, they offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, their online programs provide the flexibility you need with a high-quality education you deserve. Learn from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us. Welcome into Bartholomew Town. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Coming up in just a matter of moments, I'll be joined by Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a discussion, I think, that really has to be had right now on an individual basis and an organizational basis, which is the processing and the reaction to what's taking place in the country, specifically in the wake of the killings of 2 American citizens in Minneapolis and broadly. I mean, let's be honest about it, folks. The broad immigration enforcement actions taking place in Minnesota and on a national basis. We see a lot of updates coming in today as we record this, and just who knows what the travel ultimately will be of changes that take place in the wake of the murder of Alex Preddy. But we do know that Tom Homan, the border czar, has been dispatched to Minnesota, and Greg Bovino and Kristi Noem have been in some way, shape, or form recalled from that front line. This indicates, no doubt, that the president sees a narrative shift from his perspective of this no longer being tough on immigration to dystopia. And that is not a movie, that is not a story, that is not a television show. However the president views the outside world, that is not the direction that any administration wants to go, where it is really on the verge of, if not into total chaos and loss of control and narrative. So as that plays out in real time, questions continue to mount on a local level here in Rhode Island. What will we see? We've seen some protests, no doubt, but look, Rhode Island is a sanctuary state by definition, and according to the president, starting February 1st, there'll be no payments to sanctuary states. What the hell does that mean? But we wonder, here in Providence, in Central Falls, on a statewide or even on a regional basis in southern New England, will we see anything that resembles what's taking place in Minneapolis here on the ground? And that all the more elevates the reason to be prepared and understand how to respond if and when that does happen on a local basis. Obviously, this conversation ongoing as it is happening in real time on a national basis. So in just a moment, I'll be joined by Mike Rea of Half Street Group, who bring a new generation's perspective to leadership communication, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. It's Inside Communications presented by Half Street Group. I'm Bill Bartholomew, joined by Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea. Mike, digging out of the snow. We were just talking moments before we signed on here. Parking ban timing, parking ban extensions, and just the reality of sometimes it's the right thing to just stay home and the right thing for your employees to just work from home and rather than enter into an Arctic tundra trying to get to work.
Yeah, I mean, I am very privileged to be able to work in a field where I am able to work from home and I'm able to let my team work from home when necessary. I made the trek into Providence today. Hats off to Brett Smiley for making the best of a bad situation, but I think it's going to be a couple of days in all 39 cities and towns before it feels like we're back to full on normal. And I guess we've got another one coming right behind it. It almost feels like 2015 all over again with that Sunday night snowstorm.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I actually hear the plows outside right now, outside of our studio, and this is going to be a multi-day cleanup process just in time potentially for more snow. But we'll leave that to the experts. They were right this time, by the way. I think of faith in television meteorology has been at an all-time low. That's my own anecdotal poll, but they got this one right, and they seem to kind of reclaim some of that turf.
I give them credit. They do a pretty good job. They've got one of those the toughest jobs in the world, because if they're wrong, everybody tells them, and if they're right, everyone's pissed at them for being right.
Totally. All right. Well, let's be honest. Right now, there's just a pall kind of hanging over everybody over the country, no matter where you stand politically. I think, for at least the feedback I've been getting on the radio, where we have a lot of typically big-time Trump supporters and conservative folks who call in, I think for the most part, everyone is horrified by what they're seeing out of Minneapolis right now with the Alex Pretty and Renee Good killings, and just broadly speaking, the dynamic and sort of the tenor of what's happening on the ground. Even the look, I was talking about that in the open, of now removed from on the ground, but he was there, Greg Bavino, of the Border Patrol senior official, with kind of the long coat and everything. It just felt off. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It just felt dystopian and dark.
I think those are the best words for it. It really is. And this is something I spent a lot of time this weekend grappling with how to be able to put words. I'm in the words business. Like, we are an agency that works with organizations to help them articulate complex, difficult, challenging topics through words, through content, through connection. And I've struggled over the last 72, 94 hours to be able to, or 96 hours to be able to articulate what it is that we're seeing. And I think that dystopian is probably the best word that's there. It's really, really difficult to see. It's really challenging in terms of a sense of what we think of America being, and seeing someone cosplaying as an SS officer, essentially, in to the point of you talking about with the long coat and the straps on the shoulders, and the surrounded by other armed professionals. It's really, really challenging. And again, I think your listeners can probably tell, like, I'm struggling to find the right words to be able to put it all into perspective. Yeah. And it's something that I know a lot of our clients are, and I think that it is the right thing for us to be able to talk about. And I don't think that a podcast about PR strategy and PR communications is necessarily going to solve what's happening in these cities. But I do think it's an important conversation, because it's something that organizational leaders and community leaders and even just folks who are on, like, Little League boards or other things along those lines need to be able to reckon how they're able to talk about it with those folks that are looking to them for guidance. Yeah. And I know, like, from my perspective, I think what I can so this weekend, my wife and I went to PPAC on Saturday night. We were talking during intermission about what we saw on the news earlier that day, because it was the first time that we got away from our kids and were able to talk about it. And I, in that moment, reached out to my team and I said, look, guys, I know we've all seen this. I don't know what to necessarily say, but I just want to make sure that you know that you've got space to be able to talk about it in the office. I know that you're going to be coming in on Monday or on Tuesday, and that stuff is going to be weighing heavy on you. You're not able to flip that switch and turn off the raw feelings that we have. Even though this is a couple thousand miles away from us, it's still very much something that we can envision happening in any other American city. And it is something it's not a partisan or a political issue when we're seeing armed occupiers, federal agents occupying an American city, turning their weapons on people practicing their First Amendment rights. Nothing more than that. That is what's happening. And that dystopian image, that direct threat to the ideal of what any and all of us grew up understanding America to be, is something that's going to impact what your employees, what your board, what your constituents are bringing into every day over the next couple of weeks. And I think that it is incumbent on leaders to begin thinking about, how do I engage through my internal communications, through our equipping our managers, equipping our leaders with the right talking points, not to convince anyone of an opinion that this is right or this is wrong, because anyone who doesn't think that it's wrong is not going to be persuaded necessarily. But the vast majority feel some form of innate sadness that is going to be coming into the workplace with them. And leaders need to be able to allow people to feel as though they don't need to plaster over that to be able to perform the functions of their job.
Yeah. And that's why this conversation today is so important to put into kind of a bifurcated context. Externally, as an organization, you've got any number of eyeballs on you, whether that's people who are directly connected to the organization or people who are just aware of it, whatever the case may be. But internally, when you're an organization, you've got to be able to communicate to your people. And that is where exactly what you were saying in terms of giving space, and allowing for real-time processing to take place. But if you're advising a strategic leader of any kind in any kind of organization right now, how do you kind of distill down that internal messaging when you have something that, like you said, it's not altogether political, but it certainly touches on the political and what we would call some of the landmine issues that aren't necessarily fun for organizations to dabble in?
Right. And in some ways, there's direct correlation or lessons to be learned of the way that organizations responded to the January 6th insurgents, the way that organizations respond to mass shootings in the nearby communities that they're in. I think the first thing and again, I'm taking the politics out of January 6th or out of these shootings. That those were existential moments where people from all sides, and I remember I was working at Johnson & Wales University when January 6th happened, and we were pretty quick to put a statement out to the community, to students, to alumni, to faculty, that just called out and essentially said, we're seeing the same thing that you're seeing. We're watching the same coverage that you're watching. And it was signed by the kind of head of the institution and by a number of members of the board who are not folks who anyone would put in a particular area of them being on the far left or even the center left. That was a moment where it needed to be noted, we're seeing and we're watching the same things that you are, and we have some of the same concerns that you have. We may have voted differently from each other. We may have different views of the way that dollars in the federal government should be spent, or how fast or slow certain civil rights movements need to go. But right now, we're all seeing this thing happen, and we need to come together as a community. And that's one of the areas that I think that we can turn to and be able to look. And I think that executive leaders should be thinking about that strategically to be able to make some acknowledgement. And it can happen in a number of different ways. If you're a big organization, you can think about using your email list for it and sending something to employees and your kind of closest board members and donors. If you're a smaller or mid-sized organization, do it through your kind of regular meetings or call an all-staff Zoom where you're able to just say, it's like, look, we just want to be able to take a couple of minutes to acknowledge that there are a lot of heavy things happening in our communities and in our society right now that go beyond our 9 to 5, that go beyond the duties on our job descriptions. And then the piece is, once you kind of address that direct audience right in front of you, and I think that this is particularly poignant for organizational leaders in the Northeast or in areas that don't necessarily have these, almost like my someone sent me a thing over the weekend that's like, ICE is the black and tans right now. This is a occupying force of governmental armed agents in a city that falls under the same citizenship. And there is something that, and we're not seeing that right now in Providence. And I say right now because God knows, are we? Maybe. Like, is Boston going to? Is Philly going? Like, we don't know if and when this is going to expand elsewhere, because with this administration there's not a ton of predictability around it. And what leaders in this region should be thinking about is, after you're able to address those closest to you, those who are most connected to you as employees and colleagues and partners and collaborators, then it's making that decision and thinking strategically about, what, if anything, should I be saying publicly? Is there something I'm able to contribute to it? Am I able to stand up and show solidarity for what's happening there? And I do think that there's a role and an obligation for organizations to be able to do that in a way that's authentic to who they are, what their organization is. And I think that if they don't take care of the internal first, if they don't articulate to those closest to them, these are our values, this is what we are seeing, and this is what we are going to say, anything that they do publicly would be performative. So my advice to everybody is, take care of your house first. Make sure you're communicating with your people. Make sure your people are bought into anything that you would say publicly. So, like, for us, Half Street put out a blog post late last night. We posted on our social media about, it's been really difficult to find the words for this. And we're in the business of words, as I said earlier. But that we're not going to be silent. We don't necessarily know exactly what the words are, but we're going to speak out when we see this. We're going to continue to support the type of organizations that serve at the foundation of any community, whether it's through social service delivery, whether it's through providing access to great schools, whether it's through providing healthcare. Our clients are doing that work that makes community what it is. And if I wanted to be glib about it, I would say, like, our clients are the type of organizations that actually make America great. And we're going to speak out to be able to ensure that they're able to continue doing the good work that they do, whether it's in our community or other communities. But we didn't put that out until I had the opportunity to talk with, and we're a small team, we're 4 people, but we were all bought in on it. What we put out, every single person in the office contributed to, edited, and was able to revise. And we set out with kind of very clear understanding of, this is what Half Street stands for. And organizations should be going through some of that today. And for some organizations, it's not going to mean a public statement, or it's not going to mean a blog post on their website. It's going to mean continuing to do the work that they do. But for other organizations, it is. Other organizations, it's going to mean sharing information about what to do if and when the ICE tries to take a federal occupation of a city in our region or a region that they're working in. But every organization needs to be able to think about, how do I give my team, my colleagues, my collaborators the opportunity to be able to feel, the opportunity to be able to process what it is that they're seeing and that they're hearing when they open their news app. And from there, how are they able to bring those employees on with them to be able to have a authentic, thoughtful, and aligned public presence in a way that advances some form of common good. And again, it's going to look different for a lot of different organizations. I mean, I think what the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce put out was one of the worst examples of both-siderism that I've seen, and felt as though it was something that was done to be able to check a box and did not involve any form of that kind of internal processing to be able to understand what any of their employees would do. It's also what happens when you have 65 different organizations try to co-write something. But there is a place for business leaders, organizational leaders, community leaders, and not just politicians to be able to guide and lead some of this conversation.
Yeah, what a masterclass right there. And I completely agree with everything that you just said. And I think there's one major, first of all, I think what you just said right there is not commonly thought of. I can say for sure that, organizations that are, or individuals even that are hearing that, because this applies even on the micro level to the individual. Like, you have to understand what you're processing before you can put something out into the world. How often do we see people reacting to global affairs or local affairs without even necessarily understanding what they want to say. And that leads to this sort of dilemma that I think a lot of people and organizations face, which is, when is it more likely to backfire to be silent versus to put something out? How do you navigate that question once you've sort of shored your house up, if you will, within your organization internally? How do you know what's appropriate and when it is appropriate to go out into the public and put something out there?
Yep. Well, we talk about I think that's a great observation on it. Of there is a detriment to staying silent in certain circumstances. When we're working with clients on crisis management or reputation management, or even just things where it's like responding to the world happening around you, we ask them a couple of questions at the front end. And they're in no particular order. It's, do people expect you to say something? And if the answer to that is yes, then you need to figure out what it is that you're supposed to say. If the answer to that is no, then the next question is, would we be advancing our strategy by saying something? And in this type of circumstance, like, that could be like one of the things, and it's not like, I don't think advancing strategy needs to be this callous, am I going to benefit from it? It can be like, is this something where I can feel a sense of ownership, or that I have something to be able to contribute, or I think that I can change a course of direction or a course of understanding on this? And that's where I do think like there's ample opportunity for interesting or unique or unexpected messengers to stand up and be able to say things in this moment, or give validation to the movement against the occupation of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So that's where I do think business leaders, big organizational leaders, big foundational leaders have a great opportunity to be able to use their platforms to show people in the middle that it's okay to change your opinion, that it's okay to speak out, that speaking out doesn't make you an AOC progressive, that this is core American values that you're able to stand up for. So it's, am I expected to say something? If I say something, am I advancing my strategy or my position? The third thing, do I have something credible to be able to say? And this is where like the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce statement that came out, kudos to them for saying we need to, and recognizing we need to be able to say something on this, but they missed the mark in what they actually ended up putting out in a sense of, let's say, it's on everybody, like everybody de-escalate. It's like, well, no, you got federal agents who are shooting unarmed or licensed permitted gun owners for showing up at a protest and speaking up. Like, this is not an issue of both sides need to de-escalate.
Yeah. And I just want to read that sentence because you make such a great point, just for the listeners that don't know it. This is a portion of the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce's letter. More than 60 CEOs signed this. In part, it says, with yesterday's tragic news, again, released on January 25th, with yesterday's tragic news, we're calling for an immediate de-escalation of tensions and for state, local, and federal officials to work together to find real solutions. That is as weak as it gets, and trying to ride some kind of middle that just simply doesn't exist.
Right. And there are certain things, and I think that this is this is almost it's the consequence of cable television, where it's like there need to be like, there's this side and there's that side. It's like, in certain circumstances, there's not two sides. Like, there's not two sides to this story. Do we need strong borders? Do we need to be able to enforce our immigration laws? Absolutely. But you don't do that by sending thousands upon thousands of armed federal agents with tens of thousands of dollars of weaponry on them into the streets to be able to go in and arrest American citizens. That is not, this is not the type of thing where there's let's get the conscientious other side to that story. This is an armed occupation that needs to end, and that there are ample opportunities for people to be able to stand up. And those are the things that your employees, those are the things that your colleagues, those are the things that your constituents are grappling with on this Tuesday morning, along with the snow outside, as they're coming in and trying to sit down and do their work as though it's a normal day, or as though it's a normal footprint. And that is like, and so again, going back to like, where are the, like, what's that role within like the communications decision-making of how to weigh in? So it's, am I expected to speak? Does it advance my strategy to do so? Do I have something credible to add to the conversation? And then the fourth piece of it is, can I be able to show action rather than just say it? Mm-hmm. That becomes, and that's ultimately the biggest aspect of it. And I do think that in this moment, saying something is action at this stage, but eventually it's going to become, are you willing to be able to say something and stand up in a way that might cost you business? Are you willing to put out and say, I'm going to turn down certain type of work, or I'm going to change certain vendors based on the things that they're supporting? And that's where I do think that that there becomes opportunity for elsewhere. But again, to me right now, where this is on January 27th or 28th, whatever today's date is, one of the most important things that organizational leaders are able to do is check in with your teams. Show them that you understand that you're watching the same news that they are. Don't pretend as though we weren't all scrolling through news feeds during halftime of the Patriots game and seeing nothing but reels and other things about what happened in Minnesota on Saturday.
Completely agree and appreciate the distillation of that into those very, very well articulated words. And I think a lot of people hearing this right now, it's a little bit of an aha moment. And one other thing here, just as we wrap, I think it's important also to look, these are moments where you want to blur feelings with facts. It's going to happen. That's the nature of human emotion and reaction. At the same time, we see an administration literally gaslighting the public with their own set of facts. It's Orwellian. It resembles, it's the memory hole. Just toss what you saw down the memory hole and keep moving forward. And that can be extremely discouraging. And I think it disillusions a lot of people from speaking when they feel like they're yelling into the void. How do you sort of, as a strategist, as an advisor, as someone who runs your own organization, what's the morale check-in here for you, just to make sure that we're moving forward here, at least organizationally?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's one of the hardest things about management. It's one of the hardest things about leadership, of being able to make sure that your team is, focused on the things that they need to be focused on, in a way that doesn't compartmentalize. And that compartmentalization is a cancer. The real world happens around us, and those things, you're not able to turn them off when you step foot into your office or sit down at your desk. I think one of the things that I'm encouraging my team, that I'm encouraging the folks in my orbit to do, is find joy where you can. Like I spent this weekend, I went to my son's hockey game. I coached a baseball practice last night. We still need to find those things that bring us joy, bring us happiness, to allow us to be able to not dissociate, but to be able to recenter on what we're doing. So I think that's one thing that's really important there. And then it's also just talk to your people, talk to your employees, let them know that what your organizational values are, what your organizational philosophy is, and give them the opportunity to be able to ask you hard questions. And they're going to ask you things like, well, what is organization X doing? Will you stand up and issue a statement? Will you make be prepared for those conversations and have an answer for them. And your answer can be, look, this isn't something that we have that we have credibility to add to. And for certain organizations, that is perfectly valid. And I'm not out there and I'm not going to be the person that, waxes poetic and says every single leader has an obligation to stand up and put a statement out. Come on. Let's say, I'm a business of 4 people. We're barely cracking $1 million in revenue. we're not going to get the Trump administration to change. Like, I'm not going to get I'm not going to get my own town manager to be able to change anything. But like, there is, for us, we work in a public, we wear our values on our sleeve because we're an organization that has chosen to work with social impact organizations.
Yeah.
Us not saying something on this would leave folks scratching their head, especially if I'm going to be calling certain clients over the next several days and saying, hey, I think that you have an opportunity, or I think that you have an obligation or a responsibility to be able to say something at the very least to your employees about this. So for us, we needed to be able to weigh in. And honestly, I think my team expected us to. So I had that encouragement from them on it. So I think that's one of those gears. But this is one where, like, I don't want your listeners to kind of come out of this and think that they have to rush out and say something for the sake of saying something. Like, it needs to be, there are many, many ways to be able to show support for those who are exercising their First Amendment rights, those who are standing up to end an occupation of an American city, without having to become a public figure, or without having to create a TikTok account to be able to show what your corporation is doing. There's ample ways to be able to do that. There's ample ways to be authentic to what your brand is in doing that. But it all starts with kind of that understanding and that buy-in of, what are your people feeling? What are your people seeing out there? And what do they bring? Like, what kind of heaviness are they bringing with them into the office or into the workplace at this moment in time? And again, that's not a political statement. Like, this is, regardless of who you voted for last November, what we're seeing on television, what we're reading about in the news, what we're seeing on our social media should be shaking all of us to our core, regardless of what our personal ideological beliefs are.
Mike Rea, founder and president of Half Street Group. This is Inside Communications, presented by Half Street Group every month here on Bartholomew Town. Look, harsh moment in reality. There's no other way to put it. And how you respond to it is, it's going to be a major, major question in a lot of people's minds. Fortunately, Mike and his team here to break it down for your organization at halfstreetgroup.com. If you have any additional questions, Mike, as always, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Bill. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'm Bill Bartholomew. Remember, we're here for you every Tuesday and Thursday on Bartholomew Town from ripodcast.com. Find us wherever you get podcasts and weekends on WPRO Radio. Bartholomew Town is brought to you by Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, the University of Rhode Island Online, and Newport Film.